Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So in today's video we're going to be taking a look at how best to deal with masochism, since masochism is like the first problem node that people have to deal with when they are completing or exploring Act 5. That is what we're going to use as an example. We're going to be doing all the test fights in 5.2.4 where masochism is a global node. So first things first, there are plethora of ways how to deal with masochism. However, mostly, unless you're kind of specifically working around it, it comes down to two basic things. Either don't debuff the opponent or debuff them a lot. So in this fight, as we can see, I am relying on my intercepts. I'm not blocking, I'm not taking any block damage, I'm not doing anything else, I'm not trying to parry, I'm just intercepting, punishing his level 1s, finding openings in that manner. So that is also the core kind of problem with masochism, because what it does, it shrugs off your debuff and then heals the opponent and then goes on cooldown. The problem is shrug off the debuff part because your parry stun, which is what you are used to using to find openings against opponents, will get shrugged off and that can catch you off guard. However, if you do not try to parry the opponent, you have nothing to worry about. He will not heal, he will not shrug off your non-existent stun. Now, if you are not so great with intercepting, another very simple, very basic and kind of foolproof method is just block baiting heavy attacks. Don't try to parry opponent, just hold your block up for as long as they try to throw a heavy attack, dash back and punish that heavy attack. It's a very simple method to execute, but obviously it comes with its downsides. That means you will be taking considerably larger amount of chip damage than you would do normally. Therefore, if you just want to rely on block baiting heavy attacks, you want to use champions that have some sort of sustainability like Regen, or just champions that are extremely sturdy, like in this case Captain America Infinity War has excellent block proficiency and you can block for days. So those are the first two basic ways how to deal with masochism, is avoiding having to use your parry, and you can do that either by intercepting, which is a fair bit more difficult, or just by taking opponents' hits in your block till they throw heavy attack, then punish that heavy attack, and other than that just punish their special attacks as you normally would do, but you have no need to parry per se. And if you do not debuff the opponent, they will not heal. There will be no problem for you to deal with this piece of content. So as we can see here, it can take a bit longer. I'm not throwing Captain America special attacks just because they do debuff, and I was trying to kind of like prove a point. And that is, yes, first way, avoid your debuffs. Second way that we are going to speak about when it comes to dealing with masochism is taking 180 and taking it in completely different direction, and we're going to be debuffing a hell lot. We're going to be debuffing so much that masochism won't be able to keep up. And that is kind of like another popular way of dealing with this node, is just take champions that throw debuff after debuff after debuff on your opponent, and then masochism for vast majority of the time will be on cooldown and you will hardly notice that it is there. Most of your parries will stick. Obviously you still need to pay attention whether masochism has been disabled and is on cooldown or it has not, but as we can see here, we are throwing so many debuffs that masochism hardly matters at all. If you are relying on many debuffs, it's also extremely advisable to use Despair Mastery, at least a couple points in that mastery. It is a worthwhile investment, it's fantastic mastery, and it will reduce the heal they are getting from triggering masochism greatly, quite often to basically the point where they don't heal at all from masochism. And yeah, so we can see, for instance, Carnage. This was a rank 4 4-star Carnage, absolutely shredded that yellow jacket on masochism without much problem. Another perfect champion to showcase as an example is going to be this Massacre. So once your bat has been ignited, every single hit you land an opponent will basically cause an incinerate, plus your level 1's place bleeds an opponent. So if you are, for instance, comfortable using Massacre, then he is a great champion to use against masochism, just because you will be able to debuff opponent to such a high extent that masochism will hardly come into play. As we can see here, 3-star Massacre has absolutely no problem starting to shred this Deadpool, completely negate his regeneration thanks to Despair Mastery, and overall having a perfectly pleasant time, pretty much ignoring masochism node as a whole. Now I do need to hurry up to get my bat ignited, so I do need to land plenty of hits in opponent's block, or at them while they are incinerated. So I did accidentally take their level 1 in the block, but still, as we can see, Massacre dealt with the job extremely well, considering he's only a 3-star in Act 5, and the fight is pretty much over. So the third way, kind of like you can play around Masochism, is just pick champions that place so many debuffs on opponent that you can completely overwhelm them Masochism node. And now more specific counters to Masochism would be, for instance, ability accuracy reduction. Now, Archangel's neurotoxins are extremely potent when it comes to dealing with Masochism, just because A, you place a lot of debuffs, therefore you will be finding it quite easy to parry against the opponent, and B, neurotoxins reduce their ability accuracy, and once you have a couple of those on, chances are the Masochism simply will not trigger for rest of the fight. As we can see here, we haven't seen Masochism trigger even though we have been continuously applying debuffs. So ability accuracy modification champions are perfect answer for a Masochism node. And another fairly simple way, which would kind of go to the first couple of things I mentioned, is using champions that do not rely on parry in order to find openings, such as Ghost, for instance. Ghost is extremely great champion in dealing against Masochism, just because you don't have to parry to start hitting your opponent. Hyperion would be another quite good example. He does place his debuffs though, so you can either go with level 1 spam or just use your level 3s to push opponents past bar power and then drop kind of like your hits after that and punish their special attacks. But yeah, Ghost is again perfect champion for fighting Masochism nodes, just because Ghost does not debuff opponents whatsoever, not with her special attacks, and she does not need to parry to find openings against these guys. So we haven't triggered Masochism once in this fight, and the fight has been fairly short and simple. But next we will get into more specific kind of counters to Masochism for a tiny bit. And first we're going to talk about Sabertooth. Now, Sabertooth does have a synergy with Killmonger, which states that whenever you inflict a debuff for a second, opponent's ability accuracy has been reduced by 100%, and seemingly this synergy is pretty much perfectly designed to counter Masochism, just because Sabertooth can never trigger Masochism, because Masochism trigger when you inflict a debuff, any debuff, such as parry stun or bleed or whatever, and Sabertooth reduces ability accuracy. Therefore, if you have Sabertooth and Killmonger synergy, you pretty much ignore the Masochism node altogether and you fight as normal without a care in the world, so to say. So it is a fairly specific solution with a fairly specific combination of champions. However, it is effective. Sabertooth isn't a bad champion at all by any means, neither is Killmonger, and this basically allows you to completely bypass this Masochism node. As we're taking a look here, even a rank 3 4-star has not much problems when it comes to dealing with this ambush yellow jacket at 17k. I do not play it perfect, but you know, things happen, and there are quite few situations where you can use and abuse this Sabertooth synergy. It is definitely useful, and 100% it is perfect, absolutely perfect when it comes to dealing with Masochism. We can definitely see that throughout the fight we have inflicted a multitude of debuffs, bleeds, parry stuns, everything, and yeah, Masochism is nowhere to be seen. We might as well be fighting a champion who does not have this node active. And obviously Sabertooth ramps up his damage over time and over a multitude of fights. You can carry your Furies over, so he's going to be more and more effective as you get in the fight. Now, it is a fair mention that Sabertooth and Suicide Masteries does not go well together at all, but I just didn't want to change my kind of current mastery setup for few specific fights. But yeah, we can see that 100 hits in a rank 3 Sabertooth on his first fight is about to finish off this yellow jacket. So it's not the quickest fight, but take in consideration that this Sabertooth is only a rank 3 as a 4-star, so you can't really ask all that much from him. And next fight we're going to be moving on to another kind of like specific counter, and that is Proxima Midnight. Now, Proxima Midnight can not only parry projectiles and still stun opponents, but she can also reduce opponents' ability accuracy by 200% upon her parries, which means that her parries will always stick, will never trigger Masochism, and will never let them heal from Masochism. So I'm showcasing that using my 3-star Proxima Midnight, still in Act 5. And at the same time, I'm going to be trying to complete the missions on Proxima to increase my damage output and finish off the fight here. So I do need to be careful when I'm taking chip damage here, obviously, because I'm using a 3-star and she is not the sturdiest character. However, if you have relatively decently ranked up Proxima, or if you have a chance to rank her up and you're struggling with Masochism, then she is a fantastic option just because she can completely ignore it altogether. Now, the rest of her debuffs will trigger Masochism, so whenever you shoot your special attack, like level 2, which would inflict stun, or level 1, which would inflict heal block, will in fact trigger Masochism node, but that is hardly the problem there, because the priority problem you have is your parry stance being shrugged off. Also, Proxima Midnight is definitely a champion that can out-damage the heal from Masochism if you know what you're doing with her, if you're completing your missions. Now we have 2 missions completed, last one is left, last one is knock him down 5 times in this case. So we're starting to do just that. Accidentally took a hit in a block and we definitely can feel it. And yeah, so slowly but surely that yellow jacket is going down. Proxima Midnight is just building up for her massive burst amount of damage. Needless to say, if we were using any higher ranked up Proxima, the fight would be over already. Also, neither Sabertooth or Proxima have to be duped in order to deal with Masochism, so that is quite an important note. As soon as you get these champions straight out of the gate, they're pretty much already set to go and deal with this piece of content in particular. And now we're finishing the fight off with a nice level 3 attack. Now, last thing I wanted to emphasize is that Masochism heal actually places a buff on opponent, and it is counted as a standard buff, and it is counted as like a buff that activates and does expire momentarily. Therefore, first things first, champions like Mephisto with his soul imprisonment can prevent healing from triggering. As we see here, we have been dropping our parries. He has been shrugging them off, however he has not been healing. However, there is another important aspect to the fact that they are counted as buffs. It is the fact that they also feed Mystic Dispersion, and they also can trigger stuff like Morningstar's region because they count it as a region. So a lot of Mystic champions have quite an awesome matchup against Masochism nodes, just down due to the fact that they in fact count it as a buff, in fact activating and expiring. Therefore, if you run Mystic Dispersion, you will have quite a nice time by getting a lot of extra power during all of these fights. And yeah, so a lot of Mystic champions can use this Masochism node to gain extra power, and quite a few of them also can prevent it from activating, just like Mephisto did just now. And last example will be the fact that you can actually play around Masochism and use that healing power against the opponents. And I'm going to demonstrate that with Void in this case. Now, the trick to using Void against Masochism is timing your parries just before your debuffs would apply, to make sure that you try to apply your debuffs when Masochism is on cooldown, so they can actually stick. And needless to say, once you have acquired enough debuffs on opponent, every time you do trigger Masochism, they will in fact be losing the health, because Void is going to be doing a heal reversal thing, and that will in fact help you kind of increase your damage output. So there are quite a few champions who can fight Masochism using their petrified debuffs, such as like Captain America Infinity War, Wasp if you know what you're doing with her, so on and so forth. So that healing actually can be something beneficial to you, and you are able to actually work around it and use it to your benefit. But that will do for today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys find it useful. If you did, let me know. Hit that like button, hit that sub button. See ya!